You catch them. Not with a camera. Not with a screenshot. Not with receipts saved on a phone. You catch them the way your ancestors did, in the middle of a small group of people who all noticed at the same time. For roughly 300,000 years, lying wasn't just a social problem. It was a survival threat. And ancient humans had ways of dealing with it that modern psychology is only now beginning to understand. The first thing to know is this: your brain is ancient, and it was built, in part, to detect deception. Not perfectly, not always, but with a sensitivity shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of living in groups where a single liar could get everyone killed. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying what he called the political structure of hunter-gatherer bands. His 2012 book, Hierarchy in the Forest, documents something remarkable across hundreds of forager societies on every inhabited continent. When someone in the group repeatedly deceived others about food, about danger, about their own actions, the group didn't ignore it. They responded. And they responded collectively. This is where it starts to get uncomfortable. You live in a group of maybe 25 to 50 people. You have known every single one of them your entire life. There is no city to disappear into. There is no new job, no new neighborhood, no fresh start. If you lie to someone in this group, you are lying to people who will remember it for the rest of your life and theirs. Primatologist Franz de Waal, who spent his career studying social behavior in both humans and great apes, observed that the capacity for detecting cheaters appears to be one of the oldest cognitive tools in the primate lineage. In his research, chimpanzees who repeatedly violated trust within their group were shunned, excluded from food sharing, and sometimes physically driven away. The pattern in early human bands was recognizable, though more sophisticated, because early humans could talk. And talking changed everything. The primary tool ancient humans used against a liar was not punishment. It was not exile, at least not immediately. The first tool was gossip. Not gossip in the petty, trivial sense. Gossip in the original evolutionary sense. The rapid, highly efficient transmission of reputation information through a social network. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar, who developed the famous Dunbar's number hypothesis about social group size, argues that language itself may have evolved primarily as a tool for social bonding and reputation management, what he calls vocal grooming. Before you could write anything down, you could tell everyone. And in a group of 30 people, you only needed to tell 3. So imagine you are caught in a lie. Not a small one. A significant one. You claimed you saw game to the east when you hadn't. You led 4 people on a 2-day walk for nothing. Everyone came back hungrier than they left. The people who went with you talked to the people who didn't. Those people talked to others. Within a day, the shape of what you did has traveled through every conversation in the camp. No one calls a meeting. No one formally accuses you. But something shifts. The way people look at you, whether they pass food to you first or last, whether they invite you when they move to a new site or let you figure it out yourself. This is what researchers call reputational damage, and in a small forager band, it was devastating. Christopher Boehm describes a pattern he found in the ethnographic record of groups ranging from the Kung San of the Kalahari to Aboriginal Australians to forager groups in the Amazon. When an individual began to show a pattern of deception or freeloading, taking more than they gave, lying about effort or resources, the group response followed a predictable sequence. First, indirect social pressure. Mockery. Teasing. The group has always used humor as a leveling mechanism. Boehm calls this reverse dominance hierarchy, and it applied to liars as much as to bullies. You would be joked about, not cruelly, at first, but pointed enough that you understood. Second, direct criticism. Someone, often an elder, often respected, would say it plainly, not in anger, in a tone that communicated, "We have all noticed, and we are telling you now." Third, ostracism. If the first 2 failed, the group would begin to exclude the person from key social activities. No more food sharing. No more coalition partnerships. No more inclusion in decisions. You would still be physically present in the camp, but you would be socially invisible in the ways that mattered most. And fourth, rarely, but it happened, exile, or something worse. Archaeologist Lawrence Keeley, in his landmark study War Before Civilization, documented evidence suggesting that individuals identified as chronic threats to group cohesion, including chronic deceivers, were sometimes killed by group consensus. Not in rage, in deliberate collective decision. The word execution is not an anachronism. Bohm found records of this in multiple independent forager traditions. The group voted, in its way. And then it acted. This sounds extreme, and it was. But consider what deception meant in that world. You are hunting megafauna with handheld weapons. You are surviving winters with no stored surplus. You are navigating unknown terrain with no maps. Every single decision your group makes is built on shared information. If that information is corrupted, if someone tells you the water source is safe when it isn't, if someone claims the herd went north when they never looked people die, lying wasn't a character flaw in that world. It was a weapon, which is why honesty wasn't just a moral preference. It was enforced. And here is what is strange and worth sitting with for a moment. The enforcement worked. Bohm's analysis suggests that this collective policing mechanism, gossip, mockery, ostracism, and the credible threat of escalation kept deception rates in small forager bands remarkably low. Not zero. Humans have always lied. But chronic, repeated, high-stakes deception was rare because the consequences were simply too severe. The Kung San, studied extensively by Richard Lee beginning in the 1960s, showed a pattern of radical honesty about food and resources, not because they were morally superior, but because the system of mutual monitoring made lying more costly than telling the truth. Lee documented that hunters who returned with large kills were expected to downplay their success. Boasting was itself seen as a social threat, a first step toward the kind of inflated self-presentation that could shade into deception. You did not celebrate your own kill. Others did it for you, or no one did. And you did not lie about your failures. Now here is the counterintuitive part. Modern humans live in anonymity. You can lie to a stranger and never see them again. You can lie online and delete the account. You can change cities, change jobs, change names. The ancient enforcement mechanism, the tight social web of 30 people who know everything about you, is gone. Mostly gone. And what has replaced it? Institutions, laws, contracts, NDAs, credit scores, background checks, security cameras, paper trails. The entire architecture of modern civilization is, in one reading, an attempt to reconstruct artificially what your ancestors enforced naturally in a camp of 30 people. It is noisier. It is slower. It is far easier to evade. And something in your body knows this. That discomfort you feel when you catch someone lying, the sudden drop in your stomach, the involuntary scanning of everything they've ever told you that is not a modern neurosis. That is an ancient alarm system, calibrated over hundreds of thousands of years to treat deception as a survival threat. It still fires, exactly as it was built to, because your brain does not know you live in a city of 4 million people. It thinks you live in a camp of 30, and it is watching. You catch them, the way your ancestors did in the middle of a small group of people who all notice at the same time. And something very old inside you already knows exactly what to do next.